In part 2 with Aravinda, and I guess I would like to ask first if you could say anything about those subsequent visits before the Divine Mother.
Naturally, they were all the terrace darshans every year on 21st of February, on 24th of April, 15th of August, 24th November, and on 29th of February in 1972, which is the only leap year I was here for her darshan.
But you did see her on your birthday more than once.
Oh yes. And then, so that was the darshan as terrace darshans. And I was also in her room, besides the June visit in 1968. In 1969, my birthday, 1970, my birthday, 1971 birthday, and 1972 birthday. She was not there in my 1973 birthday. She had left her body. And in addition to that, there were, by the way, this also reminds me, maybe I come back, no, I'll tell right away. Yeah. My first birthday visit to her, it was during the first vacation of the school. So I had done the first year, and here was like a month and a half holiday. And I had learned enough by then that the many students prepared some things with their hands to bring to the mother.
Yes.
And for me, it was just perfect timing. It gave me the occasion and freedom. School was over, so I had a month, more than a month's time to prepare something. And Krishna Bhai was kind of my boarding in charge, and he was also looking after the EAVP section here. And they had all the different facilities, you can call it, or equipments, or places to inspire things and all that. So I kind of imagined, what can I make? What can I do? And then it's like a picture that came, and so I imagined mother standing on a white lotus. And so the idea kind of grew more and made some experiments, and ultimately, I won't go too much into detail, I made a wooden stand in which, mostly with thick wires bent and all that, with covers and all, lotus coming out. So the wooden plant was painted blue like water. A lotus coming out, fully open, white lotus, with petals that were made with, I think, silk. And everything was handmade. Every single thing was handmade. So, and each petal was shaped with a wire that kind of would take the shape. So here was a beautiful open lotus. The center portion of it was that yellow center of the lotus, and on that a flame-like shape, light coming out on that mother's picture, which is, that picture where she's a little bit side pose, standing full, white sari from top to bottom, and it just looked like, yes, that was it, she was standing. So that was done, and then to kind of complete it, there was another stem coming out, which was a little bit longer, and it was a half open lotus bud in which I could arrange a bulb. So it was throwing light on the picture of the mother. And it was just like what would you call it? It was not art, it was not skills, it was not stitching. It was just living in her love and living for the love and things manifesting. That was
Now you brought it to her.
and I brought it to her on my birthday, the first birthday visit to the mother in that sense. And she looked at it and she smiled so beautifully. And then naturally she handed it over to Champaklal-ji or Vasudha-ben, I do not know.
She didn't say anything?
My memories of those visits, it was like all the time so, yes, there was appreciation, but I never talked to mother in her room. It was like it was not needed to be talked. It was like there was so much more that was channeled and received and offered and embraced that words had no place.
Mary Helen once told me this was the same with her. All the communication, all the love was done in silence.
And it was not like I have to be silent. No. I'm just drowned in her, and that's it. Yeah. And you come out and you move on. So. But going back to it, only thing I can say is that anytime I can imagine anything like that, it's not explainable. It's perhaps only thing for anybody to understand is go back when you were a baby before you could think, and then feel what a mother is from that perspective. And that's mother, and that's what we felt even at that age, totally in her. So there were 4 visits to her there, and then there were 2 other visits to her just before the 1st December program. As participant of the 1st December program, I had started taking part in those. Although in my first years they were only minor roles for the 1st December, but since the team would go to her, we would all go, and that was an extra occasion to go and put the head at her feet. And then there was another visit in the last year of my higher course, the last day of the school, 31st of October. I don't know if it was the morning, no, I think it was the day before. Very quietly, without any fanfare, just a word came, whether through Arati Di or Jugalda or Kirit Bhai, I don't remember now, that tomorrow morning, get ready, you will go and see the mother. And so, okay, went there and all ready, and went at the time and went inside, and then found out that I was receiving the prize for the best student of the year. So, and that time there was one word that was said, which Kirit Bhai also told me afterwards, came back, he says, this is what mother has said to you. And I must say that I have heard her voice and I have sort of bathed in it and drunk in it, but the word was only explained to me by Kirit Bhai, because I was so much not into this. But when I look back to it, yes, I can remember. And it's one of the sweetest things. It was, "C'est bien, mon petit." What more can you hear?
Well, I'd like to move on now to your school years and sports. Did you do any sports?
Of course, as ashram students, sports is as much part of your life as studies. And in fact, in the ashram, not only as student, but in the ashram life, it's given a lot of importance, and it is very meaningful because Here it is all about developing the body, which is the instrument for doing divine's work. Luckily, I joined at the age where I knew the importance of sports. It was not that, oh, you have to do it. I loved going for sports. I had done some sports before that, and I enjoyed doing those things. So right from the beginning, sports was just, wow, it was so enjoyable. But what was more enjoyable is learning not only the skills, but this beautiful aspiration of growing more conscious in the body, growing more surrendering all the efforts to the divine, growing into the divine strength, not personal strength. That was sort of there very strongly right from the beginning. And that's the only way it was meaningful. I mean, so here we were, it was like school was open to learn everything you want to learn, no limits, and sports were open to grow any capability you had. So I was a lot into sports, doing every single thing, enjoying every single thing. And this multifaceted growing, as in school, as in sports, is what I believe at that age is integral yoga for those growing people. Of course, with that comes also the inner growth, which happens at the same time. But our time and our schedule was this complete growth. Sometimes because of my so many participation in every single thing, to our group captains, it used to be not the only one, but some of those typical problem names when they came to charting out the competitions, because competitions had to be done according to groups and all that, but they had to take care that each participant had kind of one item a day. Now, if one participant has signed up in 30 items, and there are many doing like that, and you're not in the same group for all the items.
Yes.
Every item you're scaled according to your capacity. Like you could be in high jump in one group, in a race you're in a different group, in different runs you're in different groups. So it is to encourage that people don't feel left too far behind. It's kind of a homogeneous group. But it was quite a challenge for them to make the schedules for people, giving these challenges of signing up for everything. So, made a complex thing.
Did you work with Pranab a bit?
Not directly. He was not our instructor for any of the activities. For the D group that I joined in, and later on F group. Although he was open for any time we had any question to go and ask him or to consult him. There was much later a time when I had gone once to him to ask about sea bathing. There was a time I had, soon after my leaving school and joining the Ashram press, I was given a room to stay right on the beach. Buddhi House, not many people know, it's just 2 buildings before the Ashram press. After Ashram press there is an open ground in front of the church, and 2 buildings before that, right on the beach, facing the. So since this was a location, I had the sea at my doorstep, so to speak. So I went and checked with him. I said, Pranab, sometimes people say you should not go to swim to sea anywhere at any time. I would like to know what is the instructions from the mother about that. So that was, I think, in very early 71, 72.
Before the beach was washed away.
Before we took, yeah. So here I was with him, and he told me, no, we used to go with mother in many places, and she encouraged us to swim.
Ah.
If you are a good swimmer and you take care, you can go swimming anytime. So here it was, and if I wanted 3 times in a day, I could just run across the road, jump down and on the beach and take a dip. And in those the years in joining the ashram press, as I got really more and more involved, there were times, especially approaching darshans, where there'll be a lot of pressure to do work, and I would start sometimes not having time to go to the group activities because I really wanted to be involved in whatever needed to be done for darshan. So in those times I would, whenever it finished, I would go down. Even if it is a little bit late in the evening, I could go and run on the beach back and forth and take a dip and come back to my room.
Well, I do want to get into your work at the press for one specific reason, and that is that everyone I've ever spoken to about the press say that you were the most special person who ever worked in the press, and I tell you that honestly.
Most
From many
special
people.
person?
Yes, and the work that you did was so exemplary. So, so now you can take a deep breath.
I'm kind of stunned by this
tell us
kind
a
of
bit.
statement. I do not know who are the ones who made those.
Very
Obviously, they
reputable
must
people.
love me so much. But now, before coming to the press, it was coming towards the end of the school. Actually, even before coming to the end of the school, because in those vacation times, sometimes people would go and volunteer, students, to pass their daytime. They will go to different activities, volunteer here and there. And it so happened, probably already the first year itself, I somehow landed up volunteering in the press.
Mm.
So while I was making my birthday thing for the mother, I was also, so it was like hours divided, and the day filled up nicely with that. So that time per press was like visiting 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that in a day, not a whole day.
Mm-hmm.
So we started with that, and the next year I believe I went again to the press. So there was already 2 years during the vacation time I was at the press. And coming towards the end of the 3rd year, final year of higher course, we were given once a visit to many different departments by Udarda. And I think it was in a way to prepare people for, if they would like to join one of these departments after finishing school.
Or stay in the ashram.
Yeah, stay in the
After
ashram
graduation.
and do some things
Yes.
with those departments. So his memorable visit especially was the handmade paper department for me, where one thing that comes out to show us how strong these handmade papers were, which was 100% rag content. He had a sheet placed on the floor and he stood on it, and Udarda at that time was, a good size person, and he asked 4 of us to take 4 corners and lift him up, and we could lift him up on a sheet of handmade paper.
Yeah.
That was the strength of handmade paper.
Quite amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, so now the last month of October, Artidi from school was telling me again and again, Aravind, now you must come and join the school. We want you here as Sanskrit teacher and other things. And
So you had learned Sanskrit?
yes, of course. Sanskrit was there. I had even actually learned Bengali with Pranakrishna. He used to be in the library. one of the library in charge, along with Anilda. So I had learned Bengali with him. Sanskrit also from the first year, which I don't know, maybe, yeah, I was interested, and I think, I don't know so much about learning Sanskrit the first year, but what comes out even more, because I was from North India with Hindi background and all that, Sanskrit was kind of easy, and we had already learned some Sanskrit before coming here. And there was, towards the end of that year, a play, Sanskrit play. And Shekharda called me in. He says, we would like you to do this, take part in that play. And that was a full Sanskrit play, and it was done in the school's, the courtyard, that stage that they have there. And it was a full Sanskrit play of the story of Bharat and Ram in Sanskrit. Ram leaving for the exile in the forest, Bharat coming back and finding in his absence that this had happened, getting on furious because his mother had plotted this game to make him the king. And he says, no way, and then he goes and he says, no, I'll bring him back, and he goes and falls at his brother's feet and wants to bring him back. But his brother says, no, I have to keep the word that was given by the father, and I have to spend these 14 years. Now you look after that kingdom as my deputy. And ultimately, to take his presence, he asks for his paduka, that is footwear, and takes them on his head, and he says, I will be guided by these. And he brings and installs them at the throne, and for 14 years he looks after the kingdom as a deputy of Rama. So, but the play was up to Bharat going and meeting Rama and requesting him and coming away with his padukas. So this was a play that even now I would have people referring to. Aravind, you remember your role as Bharat? Jugalda used to also time and again tell me, many years later, in that Sanskrit play, you remember? You made such a beautiful personation of Bharat. You absolutely did that so well. And there was no tricks, but what Bharat came to Rama, the tears flowed from his eyes. So, now, these are wonderful memories from those years. But
So
Narad,
wanted you to...
it's not acting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what happens in those things. And that's why I love doing the plays. You sort of enter into an experience. Its stage and that setting, especially if it is the right kind of play, that you aspire to become a person, or you kind of identify with that person. You do that experience, you live that experience.
You are that experience.
Yeah. So, in that sense, plays have not been acting for me. Plays have been experiences through that wonderful medium where you just experience one thing after the other, and it's like...
There's a beautiful DVD of an Italian singer, Magda Oliveira, who at 100 was singing and playing the piano. But she speaks about her years in the opera, and she says, the moment I went on stage, a golden light came and covered me, and it didn't leave until the opera was over. And I've always thought of that as real acting, when the force comes into one.
Yeah. In that way, plays are like life experiences.
Yeah.
They are absolutely life experiences. And yes, ultimately one can break it down to a little bit. Of course, you have to remember your lines, and you do this and you do that. So there is a preparation work. Just like physical education, there is a preparation work.
Yes.
But when you're in a flight, say a dive, and you experience the freedom of a bird, that's an experience. And that brings you to total different dimension. And that time it is not muscles and exercises and weightlifting and all that. It's like a lightness in the body, or an elevation into another dimension. Same thing with the plays. The identity and the consciousness and the subtleties of those wonderful characters that you are working with, and whether you are that character or you are an accomplice of that character on the stage, I don't think it changes that much essentially. It's not that you have to be the main character in each play to experience that. You can identify with that time, with that event, even by being in a different role. And that has been the real enjoyment and benefit of all those plays.
So back to Arati asking you to teach
Oh, yeah.
Sanskrit.
Yeah, sorry, we made a long detour.
No, wonderful,
So,
wonderful.
thanking for bringing back. So there she was asking me for doing that, and in my head, and she says, "No, Arvind, you have to write to the mother that you would want to teach Sanskrit at the ashram school, and we want you here." There was one difficulty for me for asking that. It's because I wanted to offer myself to Mother, all that I am and all I can do and all that I live, without asking anything, and be totally hers, for her to decide what I do, where I do, what I do. So ultimately that's what I did.
You wrote to her?
I wrote to her in French at that time, because that my life is at thy feet and at your service. That's it. And then the answer came back in French. Do I say it in French or in English?
Both.
Both. I don't remember the first word, whether it was j'aimerais or que tu ailles. I think it started, que tu ailles à l'imprimerie pour y apprendre le travail à fond. Meaning, now it's difficult to translate in English, que tu ailles. How would you say, may you go, or, like, it's like blessings. Go to the press to learn the work in all its details. I have learned many years later from Aurobindo, who was my mentor at the press, that he had sent his request through Andreda to the mother. I had no idea of that at that time. And for me, the blessing was that she chose what I should do. So here I was with all my heart and all my capacities and all my interest and all my devotion to do anything that I could do in the press, and as she was asked, to learn everything. And Aurobindo was the one guiding me, taking me to one section, and we went through everything in the press, one way after the other. Right from composing, and composing at that time is something that is now, like prehistoric.
It was fitting.
No typing.
No. You had to fit the letters?
Take letter molds one by one
Right.
and make the lines, and then
Roby told us we
yeah.
had 2 wonderful interviews with him.
Letterpress,
Yes.
and there again, just those, the physical movements and the details of that. One can say, oh, it was crude, it was ancient and all that, but so many delicacies and so many, what will you call them, refinements that are needed to do those things. In that simple task was like preparing for a new way of offering to the mother all one's capacity. It's not like, okay, you are given this work from either one hand or half your mind, you do something and go away. No, it was really putting the whole being into everything that we were doing. So that was that. So all the different sections, one after the other, the different techniques, and that was gradually growing more and more into designing. And then after the round, there was a lot more into printing and the what do you call it? The quality of printing, not just printing. So I think within a year, with the rounds, I was concentrating more on printing and in designing, with the full background of everything else, and gradually more and more responsibilities, or no, it's a wrong word, more and more opportunities for learning and dedicating more and more things came, and then the color printing also gradually picked up. So that was a real passion for me, because painting was one of my favorite things, and that left me out from my school teachers and experience with Krishna Lalji. I had done some lessons also with him as painting in the
What
art.
time frame in terms of years are we here in the press?
Right from finishing school, 1971, 1st of November, right the day after, joining the press, and up to the time that finally I went out of the country to Canada. That was until March 1983, 12 years almost.
12 years.
Yeah. So those were 12 years. Press was not just the day's work, it was in a way the space to offer all one is and all one can at the service of the mother. We had a wonderful family-like, what do you call it, a press family. Sumanda and Prithvishda and Eknathji were three living there day and night. So they were like, uncles, you can call it, or big brothers. And we would spend early morning to sometimes late night and near darshan sometimes even overnight work. So press was my home for day and night. And luckily I had a room very nearby to go and sleep. So sometimes I would go to my room at any odd hour, come at press at every odd hour, be there. So. And what was again enjoyable at the press is that gradually, with the kind of work, I was given also some coordination work. So books from their designing, then going through printing, the composing, then page making, if it was offset presses, negative making, mounting, printing quality, and then binding details. So I was kind of following sometimes and providing something. So I had beautiful interaction all the time with big press family. So that was...
Well, we have two more subjects to cover.
Yeah.
And one of them is so dear to my heart because I always ask everyone for their remembrances of the oldest sadhaks. Nolini, Amrita, Narad, Pavitra, and others, Madhav Pandit. whatever you can share with us of your reminiscences with him.
They were, and I would, maybe go few names afterwards, but
Surely.
but they were sort of just like my teachers and elders at the school were sort of the foundations of what we experienced as school, as the atmosphere of school. These senior sadhaks were the pillars for the physical expression of the ashram atmosphere, the ashram life.
Yes.
I think from very early on, I was somehow friend with Suresh Joshi. He was from the same northern parts, Hindi speaking. Somehow we got to know each other. And through him, because he was directly working with Amrita, I was often with Amrita in the very first year or year and a half, because I think he passed away 69 sometime.
69.
Yeah. But even those minutes passed with him, or those, 10, 15, 20, I don't know how many times going through his office and coming out, whether you see him for 10 seconds or you see him for 3 minutes or whatever, him speaking to others and back, it's such a deep impression even now of that beautiful, smiling and radiating happiness. Amrita was just sweetness and happiness. Beautiful, beautiful. In the first years, of course, we didn't see much of Champaklalji because he would be all the time in mother's room. But in later on years, I got to see him also quite often. At times I would go up and see him in what used to be sort of next to Aurobindo room, his room. At that point he was not the ferocious lion that sometimes people associated him with. He was the white lion with this beautiful smile, and soon it was also the time when he was not speaking anything anymore, but with his silence or with his gestures or sometimes little writing. But it was just love, and again mother's light pouring out that came through him. So that was Champaklalji. Andreda, I've met with him many times. Again, not that I would say he was my personal friend, but in the ashram school as a child, you know them, how would you say it? You know that they know you, even if you don't speak to them even once in a month or once in a year. They know you and you know that they know me. And knowing them who they are and what they are doing, and whether they do something with me directly or indirectly or with the group that I watch, everything counts. Relationship is everything. It's not only what I spoke to him and he spoke to me. Everything that he does or that I know him having done or is doing is part of our other conversation. It's part of learning. So Andreda was there and Pavitrada. Very short time, very few visits, but again, wow. He was like the steady flame that did not flicker, and I cannot say that I have seen him 3 times or 5 times or 10 times. I don't know. Maybe I just imagined all those. But I know his presence, I know him physically, but it was such a strong presence. It's a steady flame. And with him, there is that, it's like a white flame, it's like that solid silence, totally turned to the mother.
Nirodharan?
Nirodha was, when I was for 3 years living in the ashram every night, he was the person I would often interact. In fact, sometimes sleep in his room, which was right opposite. He had, said, if you want to sleep here, go and sleep. So we interacted many times. Again, there was never any need or occasion to have a personal conversation. Nothing that I asked about myself or I had to tell. Of course, I'll go for his birthdays, wish him his birthday, and when he would find out, he would wish me for my birthday. Other than that, I'd be assisting him at the samadhi when he is arranging the very first arrangements. He was involved at the thing, the early morning batch. He knew me, I knew him, he always welcomed me. It was much more to Dolly Dee and others. they were the ones engaged in conversation. Nirodha was, bhalo acho? Ha, bhalo achi.
Well, 2 more. And
Now,
Udar,
Udarda, of course.
because you have to talk about him. And lastly, Nolini.
Nalinida, Udarda. No, there is many more. Bulada.
Bulada, yes.
I mean, he was a very beautiful presence. Juman Bhai. I mean, where can, even the name is escaping me. Nahar family father.
Noran Singh. Prithvi Singh.
Prithvi Singh.
Prithvi Singh.
Right from seeing him, a publication department.
And he was
Ravindraji.
Ravindraji. Yes.
Anuben, who had a deep, prolonged contact, and towards the end, she would say, my son. She had really embraced me like her child. And also through dance, right from the early times, I had somehow felt inspired, and I had started dancing with her right from the school times. And so all those years, we were doing many things together in dance. So she had loved me very, very dearly. Kept telling me when I used to visit from out of country time to time, okay, when are you coming? When are you coming back, settling here? And at that time she was very much involved in Udavi school, and she used to come and tell me that, Aravind, come, I need you in Udavi school now. Another thing, now if it is getting too long, please tell me to hurry up.
Not at all.
Okay. because when you open up the thing,
we
when
haven't
you
touched on Aurobindo yet.
Yeah. when you touch on those things, suddenly memories come, and it's so rich and it is so beautiful.
No.
And it's not something that I have kind of actively talked in a long time to anybody. So, this conversation is evoking wonderful, wonderful memories of deep contacts. Anuben's last thing that we worked together on was her wish to put in dance drama a short book that had come out by, I think it's Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull,
right?
Which Naradana had also translated into Bengali. He had made a little thing, and she wanted to compose a dance on that, and that was before after school days, maybe 75, 76, something like that. So we took that up and we chose some musics and we started improvising things. And it was like a project that had no beginning and no end. And sometimes for many other reasons it will get held up. But it was a project that was never finished and never put to an end. It remained always kind of sometimes in the back burner. And in Nalinida's recitation of that story, he has named Jonathan Shobhanagar. That's the name in Bengali. So there were times she used to call me Shobhanagar. and for years it kind of went on. And somehow it didn't come to play. And I would not now go into the details because it will be just totally out of the thing. Somehow the events of my leaving, going out of country, and then later on coming back and visiting, suddenly showed to me that, look, there is something happening along that experience that could not come on a stage, but it is happening on the live stage. So that was Anuben. Ravindraji also was very, very loving and kind memory, but wow, here was somebody that, not everybody could kind of take his austerities. Sometimes he was a bit too severe.
We have stories.
But whether as editor of the magazines that I was working at the press at that time, there were some exchanges with him, or whether just going to ashram for whatever reason. Again, very loving, always embracing with wide heart. That's one thing. All these people with their love, they didn't always, in my case, embrace me with wide arms physically, but it was the wide heart. And you were embraced as warmly and as tightly and as physically with that wide heart than with physical arms. And that's an experience you cannot just... Now, since we mentioned other names, there was Jiman Bhai. Again, such a sweet, a constant sweetness.
And encouragement, if I might say.
Constant sweetness, encouragement, and a steady energy that will keep moving to whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
And even his place right next to the Samadhi, his room, he's there. And even now, I go there and look in that direction, and his image and his personality and his... I remember that, I relate to that. That presence and that personality and that sweetness, constant sweetness. I think he has embraced so many people. So many people I have remembered later on, even in Aurobindo, whose first experience is sitting near Samadhi, going there constantly, at one point being called by him, or touched on the shoulder, talking to them, encouraging them, bringing them to a place, getting them established in the ashram. So he could feel people ready for that, would connect to them and encourage them. So Jiman Bhai again, and imagine those 3 years seeing those people every day. Of course not Amrita at that time, but even in those years, when go to that reception room and behind that room, which used to be Amrita's room, his presence, his personality would kind of speak up. Same thing, Pavitra Dada. All those presences were there. Nalinida, of course, that's the incarnation of sweet wisdom. So wide, and again so steady in his in his being at the disposal of Mother and Aurobindo to communicate whatever needs to be communicated.
Amal?
Amal, I have known, but lot more after my visit, coming back from Canada. During the years of before going out of country, my contact with him was only listening to his talks and other. There was no personal contact. As editor of Mother India, he never came to the Ashram press, and there was no need for me to go and meet him.
Yeah.
So that occasion didn't arrive. But listening to his talks, time to time, they will be in the ashram or in the school.
Let us close with some memories about Auroville and the years of your connection with Auroville.
Well, Auroville's memories are knowing about it from my father's visit for the inauguration. But I couldn't go really to visit it in June when I visited for 2 weeks. But right from the first year of higher course, time and again, there will be groups of young students, whether it is Sunday during the day or it is one evening and all that. They will be going often with group captains, Batida, often be going there and just doing things. And this was like an extension of the ashram's manifestation. Here it was a city called by the mother that we would aspire for, that we would imagine, but an open field to create that. So with that, there was a lot of going and coming. Gradually, as the years passed, those going and coming were much more with Matrimandir work, as many volunteers for ashram would go.
Mm-hmm.
But even there, okay. I think maybe we close it for now, because
I think we have to, because
just
the battery's gone out.
so we close it now, and
we would be happy for another visit with you.
I'll be more than happy to continue. As I said, I'm enjoying it just so much.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Aravinda, thank you so much.
Thank you, Narad, for this wonderful occasion.
Sure.